I've made a couple videos on hot electric car stocks. Many EV companies experienced a serious pump, arguably due to the success of Tesla. I've discussed a bunch, and I'll have a link in the description of all these videos. NIO was one of the earlier companies I talked about. NIO was definitely a standout among a lot of these companies because NIO actually had factories, 5-figure sale numbers, and multiple models released. It was very impressive, especially when you look at other companies in the sector, like Nikola, which has never actually produced a vehicle yet has a massive market cap. It was refreshing to see a company that was making serious headway. The major concerns I had about the company were the fact that it was unprofitable. It's always been a risk to invest in a company when they aren't even breaking even. Additionally, they are a Chinese-only company who seem like they want to break into the American market soon. They can be traded on American stock exchanges, they have English websites available, and they're hiring in the United States. I think there's a major concern when investing into Chinese companies, especially when they've received support from the Chinese government and are in the technology sector. The concern is the possibility of getting banned in the United States over security concerns, especially when they have vehicles with pretty extreme telemetry. Now, obviously, all sorts of car companies have telemetry-based vehicles, especially Tesla, but it's what the government decides is acceptable or not. There have also been talks about delisting certain Chinese companies in U.S. stock exchanges for a while now, assuming they don't comply with audits or other requirements. That would obviously hurt any company looking for investments from the U.S., like NIO. Is this likely to happen? Probably not, but as tensions between the US and China grow, it is something to keep in mind. Also, if they don't have a US factory, they could be subject to tariffs or other regulatory measures more easily. Many Asian manufacturers like Toyota, Kia, really any of the big manufacturers all have factories in the United States. Now, fairly recently, NIO stock has taken a massive drop. The price has absolutely crashed down. Was this purely a correction? In reality, it appears that there has been a big concern among investors about share dilution. Essentially, NIO have printed out a massive amount of shares to sell in order to raise capital. While this proves to be a useful way of obtaining capital, selling shares dilutes or weakens the value of current shareholders. Does printing and selling shares always result in price drops? Not necessarily. If the demand is there, they're not actually going to drop the price much, if at all. They might continue to grow even with printing. But obviously in this case, it led to quite a significant drop from all-time highs. And unfortunately, this is sort of the way publicly traded companies go. Sometimes governments give out money to support companies, which the Chinese government has done for NIO in the past, but no investors are going to give out money for free. They want something in return. Partial ownership of the company through shares, or perhaps a bond where they get paid. There are only so many ways to raise capital. So will we ever see NIO share prices recover from this? Will we see it reach all-time highs again? That really depends on how things play out. If NIO utilizes this cash to continue towards their road of profitability and becomes a growing, profitable company, then yes, of course, things will pan out for them. If they sustain this cycle of raising capital but not actually becoming profitable, well, then you have to consider what investors are willing to do, what they're willing to tolerate, and where they draw the line. How much time can they withstand with the company, especially as other sectors of the market show unprecedented growth, arguably in safer sectors? It's also important to consider the amount of shares we're dealing with. That's 75 million. In total, they're going to be raising about $1.5 billion. That could be super useful for them, assuming they reach profitability. That is a fairly large amount of money, but also keep in mind they currently have a nearly $22 billion market cap, which again is very high for a company with negative earnings per share. Their earnings per share are actually negative 44.1. NIO is definitely a very interesting company, and I think they do have a lot of potential. Things like this aren't unheard of, and they are a company that is really hungering for cash flow. It's hard to give advice on exactly what you should do. Generally, if I'm bag holding, unless I have a suspicion that the stock is on a downwards trend, maybe if it was a stock like Macy's or some other company that's struggling in light of recent events, then it probably doesn't make sense to hold to zero. But if you believe NIO is doing things well, if they're accomplishing a lot, then it probably doesn't make much sense to sell right now. Additionally, if you have 100 shares or more, you can be selling covered calls on NIO stock right now. So you could be turning a profit and making money even if you're down. NIO is a sort of volatile stock, so the premiums on these actually aren't awful. You can make a good amount of money just selling calls. I hope that gives some perspective on why NIO stock dropped and how you want to continue forward with this stock. This can be a trying time, especially if you bought really high, but you have to consider all the variables here and how you truthfully feel about the company. Remember, they have negative earnings per share, so they need cash flow from somewhere. And this might not be the last time we see something like this. Additionally, if you like this video and you want to get 2 free stocks, there's a link in the description to sign up for Webull. It's an online brokerage, which I think is quite good. Their mobile app and desktop application are both really great. I use it a lot as a secondary brokerage. And who doesn't like free stocks?